Ladies and gentlemen, it's official. VIKTOR GYÖKERES will be moving from Sporting to Arsenal in a deal estimated to be worth 63.5 million euros guaranteed, plus 10 million euros add-ons. David Ornstein, Fabrizio Romano, all the big dogs kind of breaking the news sometime last night while the Club World Cup was going on. And finally, the saga is over. I would say the Gyökeres saga in general, right? Because there's been a few clubs kind of floating around with his name being whispered as a potential target for those clubs. And I said I was going to speak about Gyökeres about a week ago, right? When the name was first hovered around Arsenal. And I gave you guys a very brief, vague thought on how I thought he would do at the club if they were to sign him. And I always said, if the deal becomes official, we'll make a whole video kind of talking about it. Because Gyökeres is really a fascinating signing. For anybody who was going to make the move, by the way, right? He's fascinating. And he's fascinating because I think he's the most polarizing player, really, to come to the Premier League in quite a long time. The reason for that is this is a guy who scored nearly 100 goals over 2 seasons. And yet I don't feel like there's a real consensus opinion around the guy. Depending on who you ask, you could get a completely different thought on him. And yeah, most players kind of have that, right? Very few players, everybody either just rates them or doesn't rate them. There's always opinion, right? But with Gyökeres, it's hard to kind of think of a player that has had so much success over the last 2 seasons, and yet no one is really too sure about the guy. Some people think Gyökeres is him. He's the guy. He's the guy that every club needs to sign if they're looking for a center forward. Look at the numbers. Look at the goals. How can you not sign him? While others look at maybe his flaws. They look at the fact that he played in the Portuguese league. Can it translate? Is he good enough for the Prem? As always with these things, I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And that's really why I want to make this video, right? VIKTOR GYÖKERES. I just got finished watching an amazing video by the Different Knock YouTuber by the name of Alex Moneypenny. I've done stuff with him on Sky Sports before, and I think he made a really good video on Gyökeres. I'm gonna leave it in the description as well too. But I thought his video really encapsulated everything to know about Gyökeres: the strengths, the weaknesses, the pros, and the cons. And I was reading the comments after, and a lot of people, some of them liked the video, but a lot of Arsenal fans and a lot of football fans saying, "Oh, you're just a hater. All you're doing is this is just bias, blah blah blah." Again, I'm going to go back to what I said a week ago, right? When it comes to signings and the transfer window in general, I feel like people are so blinded by if their team is making a signing, there's no way it could flop because they're the pros. They're the guys who look at everything positive about it. Like, you don't know more than the club, right? But the reality is not every signing ends up working, and not every signing ends up being as successful as first anticipated. There's some signings that you might not think would do that well, and then they end up doing way better. There's also signings that you think are damn near guaranteed hits, and they end up flopping. That's the window, right? You can't guarantee anything. Well, with Gyökeres, right? I want to talk about the pros. I want to talk about the cons. I honestly think the biggest pro is the fee. I think for 63.5 million euros, which is about what, 53 million pounds guaranteed, and then the 10 million on add-ons. So max, really, you're looking at a signing that's going to end up being 60 something million pounds. I feel like that's pretty risk-free. I think in this market, paying 53 million pounds for any player is kind of the going rate. And we've seen that throughout this window, right? Madueke going for around 52 million pounds altogether. Elanga going for about 55 million pounds. Cunha was about what, 62 million. 50 to 60 million now is what 30 million used to be a few years ago, and what 20 million used to be a few years before that. That's the going rate for any half-decent player. It's crazy to think about because I come from an era where really, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we signed Berbatov. Man United signed Dimitar Berbatov for 35 million or 30 million. That was our club record at the time. I think it might have even been a Premier League record until Di Maria broke it all those years back for 62 million. And that tells you everything, right? Di Maria, Champions League final man of the match from Real Madrid, Argentine international at the peak of his powers, was 62 million. And that smashed the British record fee at the time. Now, Gyökeres, 60 million euros, 50 million pounds or whatever, that's standard. So I think in this market, that's actually really good value. First and foremost, because he is one of the better goal scorers in the world. Whether you like him or not, whether you rate the Portuguese league or not, you cannot argue against those pure numbers. That's a lot of goals. That is a lot of goals that, yes, people have gone to the Portuguese league and had success in. Bas Dost, Jackson Martinez, Darwin Nunez. They've had success. They've scored goals. No one has scored goals like this guy. The goal scoring numbers that this guy has registered over the last 2 seasons in Liga NOS, or the Primera Liga, whatever you want to call it, those are unseen. Let's call it what it is. So that's another pro. This guy knows how to score goals. In front of goal, I think he's a venomous finisher. Venomous is the word I'm going to use here, right? Because that's how you have to describe his finishing. It's vicious. It's ferocious. Leaves no room for human emotion. Cold-blooded finisher in front of goal. Striking across goal, near post, roof of the net, through the keeper's legs. He is a clinical finisher. That cannot be denied, and that has to be a pro. If you're a center forward and you don't know where the goal is, you don't know how to find the goal, you're not clinical in front of goal, that for me is a red flag. And you have to have ridiculous movement in front of goal to continue generating chances to almost like offset that. So first and foremost, the fee is great. I'm going to get into even more why I think that the fee is great. But the fact that this guy knows how to score goals like very few others do is a massive, massive pro. Then I look at his physical skill set, how strong the guy is, how fast the guy is in a straight line sprint, got broad shoulders. He's good at holding players off. That's going to translate well to the Premier League, in my opinion. This is a physical league. We all know that, right? The number one thing people say when they come to the Prem is how intense and physical a league it is. And I look at Gyökeres and I don't look at physicality and athleticism being a major weakness for him. I think that's something that he will thrive in, if anything. Like I'm sure he will relish the matchups against the Ruben Diaz's of the world, the Virgil van Dijks, the Konates. I think he's going to relish that. So that's another pro for me. And then I think another thing that I really like about Gyökeres for Arsenal is how hungry he is for this move. If you believe the reports, he's basically lowered his wages to make this move get over the line. He's told his agent to waive the agent fees so that Sporting can get more out of the deal, so that they're more inclined to make it happen, so that he can get this move. He threatened to boycott Sporting training sessions for the rest of the summer. He said he'll never play for the club again. And now, I mean, look, that's one way of looking at it from Arsenal's point of view. That's a great thing. Now, if Gyökeres ever bangs at Arsenal and wants to go to Real Madrid, there's a good chance now he's probably going to do the same thing to Arsenal. But I think the hunger to play for this club has to be seen as a positive. He wants to make it happen at Arsenal. He wanted this deal to happen. I think that has to be admired if you're an Arsenal fan. The final pro for me, when it comes to VIKTOR GYÖKERES, the big pro, he offers Arsenal something different that they don't have. And to be honest with you, it's similar to Madueke. As much as I'm a kind of a critic of the Madueke deal in terms of how much they're spending on him, and I don't really see a huge need for him, what is inarguable is that Madueke offers something to Arsenal that they don't currently have. A real 1v1 threat over 90 minutes. A guy who's willing to commit players. A player that's willing to run at players. Beat them on the outside, beat them on the inside. High volume shooter. Arsenal don't really have that across their front line. That's a positive in the Madueke deal. And I think it's a positive in the Gyökeres deal because they don't have an option like him. Kai Havertz has done an admirable job up front. I think personally, I was never a huge fan of that move. I was willing to give Arteta time in terms of how he could get the best out of him. And relatively, I actually think he did get the most out of Havertz that he could. Havertz is not an elite center forward. And to be fair to him, he actually got production out of him in a way that I didn't really think he could. Havertz has served the purpose. He's good at holding the play up. He's good in the air. He reads chances in the box pretty well. That's really what you get from Havertz, right? But there's a limit to what he can give you. Merino, if you think he maximized what he could get from Havertz, boy, he more than maximized what he could get from Merino up front. I never ever envisioned Merino being a real legitimate threat for Arsenal at number 9 the way he was last season. But again, he's a box threat, good in the air, good off set pieces, good at reading chances inside the box. Gyökeres is something entirely different. He's an entirely different proposition. And I think that's good that Arsenal are bringing something different because there's no point in just adding what you already have. Arsenal have a very, very good squad across the team, numerous brilliant players, but there's clearly something stopping them from getting to the next level. And I'm sorry, to get to the next level, you don't just continue adding what you already have. There's no point in buying more, wingers who read chances well into the box, like a Trossard, like a Martinelli. There's no point in buying more first phase midfielders. It's great that they have, but it's not really adding something that they don't already have. Gyökeres is something that Arsenal, when's the last time they even had a center forward like that? That was just a pure goal-focused number 9 that just runs channels, runs in behind, stretches back fours, physically dominant. They haven't had one in God knows how long, to be honest with you. And they certainly don't have one in the squad right now. So to get somebody like Gyökeres, who gives Arsenal a new dimension, allows Arteta a new kind of game plan, gives defenders something new to think about, to get that for the price that they've gotten it at, I think is wonderful for Arsenal. So those are all pros for me, and they're all big pros. Make no mistake about it, Arsenal are signing a talented center forward, but there are negatives. The biggest negative for me with Gyökeres is his technical ability. Now, one thing I hate about how modern football fans think is they correlate technical ability to aesthetics. So if you value technical ability, it's like, oh, you're just an aesthetics merchant. Oh, you just can't. Well, it's more important for how they look for you rather than how effective they are. And I really just wondered to myself, like, how did football fans ever get this far deep that we now just devalue technical ability? The greatest player to play in the history of the Premier League for me, and ironically, the greatest player in the history of Arsenal Football Club was Thierry Henry. And he was a brilliant goal scorer. He was wonderful in front of goal. What a gifted finisher. But look at his technical ability. Look at what made him so brilliant. On top of the goals was how he could manipulate the ball. How good he was in tight spaces. The fact that he could drift out wide and almost play as a winger, beat players, put passes into the box, feed players through. Just a natural feel for the game. His technical ability was on a different level to everybody else. Robin van Persie was a pure-blooded goal scorer, but his technical level, the guy was practically a number 10. He played out wide for Arsenal for many years. He was a technically gifted center forward. And that's what made him, in my opinion, at his very best, the best number 9 in the world. I truly believe for 2 years, Van Persie was at that level. Because, yeah, there were better goal scorers. There were goal scorers on his level. But no one could do with a football what Van Persie could do from the center forward position. This was back when Ronaldo was a winger, right? Dennis Bergkamp, obviously not a number 9, right? But almost a second striker behind Henry. His technical ability. I'm not saying you have to be Henry or Van Persie or Bergkamp. Very clearly, you don't have to be, right? Not many center forwards are like that. We've seen center forwards that aren't the most technically gifted light up the league. Look at Erling Haaland, for example, right? You know, they used to say about Bergkamp when he walks through snow, when people walk through snow, you can see their footsteps. Bergkamp was so light-footed, was so, I don't even know, like he was like a ghost at times that you don't even see his feet when he walks through snow. That's how gifted his feet are. Haaland is not Bergkamp. So what I'm trying to tell you guys here isn't that technical ability is the only thing that matters here. But Haaland is a freak of nature. Haaland's transition ability, Haaland's ability to read chances inside the box, Haaland's instincts, his ability to never be offside, his cold-blooded finishing makes him one of one. Haaland is an exception rather than the rule. You still need to have a little bit of poise, I feel, and a little bit of cleanness to your game to really work at the elite level. Honestly, like you can name me center forwards like Sorloth, like Chris Wood. They're great center forwards. They've done their job, right? But there's a reason for me that they'll never be considered the best goal scorer. They'll never be considered the best center forwards in the world. And I look at Gyökeres and I do feel, I find him clunky. I do. Some people might think that's a poor criticism of me to name, but I feel that way. I think he is clunky. I feel like he does take too many touches to get the ball under control. I feel like he isn't the smoothest at receiving, turning, and firing off shots. I feel like he does take too many touches. He does take too many steps. And I think Alex made that point brilliantly in terms of how he depicted it, in terms of even some of the goals that Gyökeres has scored. It worked in the Portuguese league. Will it work in the Champions League at the highest level? Will it work against the best defenses in England? Will he have that time and space to kind of take that many touches or take that many steps to get the ball in full control like he wants to? I think there's a doubt. But why does the technical ability aspect of this matter so much? Again, the clunkiness. Why does that matter so much? I think it matters because I think it severely impacts the way he's able to score goals. When you look at Gyökeres' goal catalog, you're really looking at a few kinds of goals. And I think for strikers, again, unless you're Erling Haaland, who is the master of scoring basically in one way, you want a center forward that can really score in a multitude of ways. And with Gyökeres, you look at his goal catalog, and they're typically the same kind of goal. A ball down the line or down the channel, he basically chases it down, outmuscles a defender, and then scores from a tight angle. Or sometimes it'll be a good angle. But it's really chasing down loose balls or balls over the top or balls in behind. He's really that kind of center forward. How many chances like that is he going to score at Arsenal, who are a team that really face, for the most part, deep blocks, low blocks, teams that camp in their own box or on the edge of their box and really dare Arsenal to break them down? I don't know. As far as I've seen of Arsenal, maybe it's because they've had Havertz, who isn't that kind of center forward. But over the last 3 years, you can't really say Arsenal have been a team that have found much success playing balls directly in behind defenders because the space doesn't really exist. It's similar to City, right? Haaland used to be a player at Dortmund that thrived in transition, similar to Gyökeres. He's had to learn to score. He's had to score in different ways, and because he's able to, it's no problem. But he doesn't really get that transition opportunity because of the way teams defend against City. That's a problem for Gyökeres. A lot of his goals are scored that way. He does get a lot of touches inside the box, and in front of goal, there's no question about it. Like I said, he's a killer. Another aspect, though, is you look at who his goals are coming up against in the Portuguese league. I think I read somewhere that 30 out of his 39 goals or 31 out of his 39 goals came against the bottom 10 teams in the Portuguese league, or towards the bottom, right? Which is great. I mean, look, you have to play everybody in the Prem. You're not playing every single game against City or Liverpool or Chelsea, right? You're playing everybody. But I think it is damning that over the last season, he scored 1 goal against the big 3. Against the top 3 teams outside of Sporting. What does that mean? Do you maybe have to watch the games in more context to see why that reason is? Maybe you do, but when you're looking at just the numbers black and white, which of course you always have to have context, but when you're just looking at the numbers black and white, that's not very encouraging. And I think you look at Gyökeres and you look at some of his games against the bigger sides around Europe this year. Yes, he scored a hat-trick against City. 2 of them were penalties. One of them was a transition opportunity against, what's his name, Simpson Poussey, right? It wasn't City's greatest team out there. That was a period where City couldn't win a game in 12 or 13. So it's hardly like he was playing vintage 18-19 Manchester City. He was playing a weakened side. When you see him up against more solidified, organized defenses at an elite level, for example, when he played against Arsenal, I think he did struggle. There were moments where he did find a little bit of success. Yes, that's unquestionable. But there were also moments, largely, where trying to hold up the ball against Gabriel or trying to kind of spin off William Saliba, he struggled to do so because in Gabriel, you have a center back who's just as strong and just as big as VIKTOR GYÖKERES. So he struggles against him. Against Saliba, he's got a guy that in transition, if he does even manage to spin him, Saliba's recovery pace is fast enough and elite enough to keep up with him. So yes, Gabriel and Saliba, they're arguably the best center back partnership in the world, if not top 3. So he's lucky he gets to play against them. If anything, he's gonna have tough days in training. But when you look at the Premier League, look at the quality of defenders, it almost feels like every single center back in this league now is 6 foot plus or above, fast in transition, fast at running behind, elite in the air, elite at defending their box, good at kind of defending channels. That's the prototype of Premier League defenders. So Gyökeres, the opposition he's going to face in the Premier League will be infinitely harder than the one he faces in the Portuguese league. That is unquestionable. So this is why I keep hearing this. Oh, he scored 50 in the Portuguese league. Of course he's going to bang in the Prem. It doesn't exactly work like that. Again, Alex made a great point, and it's exaggerated, of course, but it's to make a point. It's all relative. If I told you there's a center forward in the Hungarian league who scored 100 goals in the last 2 years, Arsenal are about to sign him, no one would say, oh, he scored 100 goals in the Hungarian league, he's definitely going to bang here, because we understand the Hungarian league is nowhere near as strong as the Premier League. That's why when they award the European Golden Shoe, the top 5 leagues have like a 2 times multiplier. The Portuguese league only has 1.5 because everybody recognizes it is a weaker competition than the elite European leagues. So you have to take those numbers with context, and you also have to look at how he's scoring those goals. It's a lot of penalties, and it's a lot of goals in transition. How often is he going to kind of be given those kinds of opportunities at Arsenal? Which I guess leads into our next point. How do Arsenal get the best out of Gyökeres? For Gyökeres to really work the way Arsenal fans will want him to work, for him to be the difference maker that he was at Sporting, at Arsenal, for him to translate to the Premier League as well as he can, which is the big question mark that everybody has, it's actually not on Gyökeres. Gyökeres is who he is. He's 27 years old. This is him. We know what he is. We know his strengths. We know his weaknesses. For Gyökeres to be maximized in the Premier League to his full potential, it's on Mikel Arteta. It's on Mikel Arteta. And it's why I continue saying this season is the biggest one yet for him. And it might end up being a make or break one for him, because these kinds of signings bring something new to Arsenal. But for them to bring something new, he needs to be expansive enough to allow them to bring something new. Because if you just think Gyökeres can be plugged and placed for Kai Havertz, and he's just going to automatically score the goals he did at Sporting, I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen. Arsenal will need to change the way they play to accommodate for VIKTOR Gyökeres. He's going to have to accommodate as well too. Make no mistake about it. He's going to have to learn a new side to his game. He isn't going to be given the space he was given at Sporting, no matter how much Arsenal accommodate for him. It's impossible, right? They play different teams. They're a different kind of team. They're a different kind of manager. He will not find the space and the success that he did at Sporting at Arsenal. He's not going to score 50 goals in the Prem. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. But he can be a dangerous, dangerous weapon for Arsenal if Arteta is willing to switch things up a little bit. It might mean that he loses a little bit of control. He might need to introduce a little bit of chaos, to quote the Joker. He might need to do that. He might need to kind of take the shackles off some of his wingers at times. Take the shackles off his creative midfielders at times. Take the shackles off his team in general to allow a little more risk throughout his team. We've seen sometimes of Arsenal, right? They turn down the risky ball that has maybe a 50% chance of leading to a goal-scoring opportunity, because there's also a 50% chance they lose the ball and all of a sudden they're on the back foot. Arsenal last year were a very risk-averse side. Probably the most risk-averse they've been since Arteta turned them into a title challenger. For Gyökeres, Madueke, and potentially Eze as well too, yes, they will have to accommodate to the team. They can't just expect to play like the way they did at Chelsea, Palace, and Sporting at Arsenal. But also, Mikel Arteta has a job on his hand to make sure that they can be platformed correctly to get the best out of their skill set. Because they bring something special to this team. Eze will be a wonderful creator in terms of just unlocking defenses for Arsenal. But he has to be given the platform to do so. Look at what the platform he's given at Crystal Palace. They allow him to be himself. Gyökeres needs to be given the platform to get the kinds of chances he was getting at Sporting. Arsenal don't create those chances yet. I think I read the stat. Gyökeres runs the channel through on goal 6 times at Sporting because they play him that way. Because that's the way they play. Now, Arsenal, there's no guarantee that they're going to play 6 times into Gyökeres per game. They might not even be given that opportunity by other teams. But they're going to have to accommodate a little for him. Similar with Madueke. Similar to perhaps Rodrigo if he comes to the club. That's the brilliance of football. I always tell you guys, there's strengths to every player, there's weaknesses. No player you can sign is perfect unless your name is Lionel Messi. To get the best out of these players, there's giving and there's taking. So what do I think about Gyökeres? Honestly, I think there's no way to know. As I said, there's strengths to him, there's weaknesses, there's pros, there's cons. I love the fee. I think anything above that fee would have made me think, this is a huge risk. Because there is no guarantee that Gyökeres comes to the Premier League and bangs. There's no guarantee whatsoever. I see people almost trying to make these extreme statements about him. Whether he's definitely going to bang, you're overthinking it. Chris Wood scored 20 goals. Or, we know the Portuguese league. Look at all these other guys. He's going to flop. There's no guarantee of either happening. There's never a guarantee with signings, but I think this one more than ever, there is no guarantee to see how he does. We just have to wait and see. We have to just watch and see how this unfolds. And I think Arsenal fans should be willing to give him that time. This is a guy that if used correctly and if really maximized could be the difference between coming so close and really getting over the finish line. We just have to kind of wait and see. But for the fee, I think it's a risk worth taking. Because it is a risk, don't get it twisted, but it's a risk worth taking. If they were to spend 70 million pounds on Gyökeres, 80 million pounds on VIKTOR GYÖKERES, all of a sudden, I would have been a lot more apprehensive about this deal. Because then I think really, wow, that's like, you're throwing everything at this. But for 53 million pounds, guaranteed. If he gets the add-ons, I always think add-ons, like I feel like we exaggerate them at times. If the add-ons are achieved and you pay 10 million more, it's more likely than not the guy accomplished what you wanted him to accomplish. Add-ons are like incentive-based. So, I don't know, if he scores 20 goals plus in his first 2 seasons, then you pay the 10 million or something. I'm not saying that's the add-on here. But for example, if the add-on 10 million, if he scores 20 goals, you'd want to pay that add-on because it means that he was a success at your club. So I'm really looking at the guaranteed thing here. 53 million pounds guaranteed for a striker that when you look at the striker market, all of us, in my opinion anyways, it's not a great market. I feel like there's a lot of risks throughout. Arsenal, we're talking about Benjamin Sesko, this entire deal. And although I think Sesko has a higher potential than Gyökeres, I think he's a more gifted center forward in terms of his all-around play. The reality is he's not Gyökeres right now. There's a potential to be that. But at the moment, Sesko is very, very raw. He would not be able to come to Arsenal and have an instant impact the way this guy might be able to. And down the line, wow, he could be a real problem. The problem is Leipzig want you to pay 90 million pounds for that guy right now because he might be the finished article in a few years. I'm sorry, that's not a deal I'm ever doing if I'm Arsenal. Ever. Similar to Ekitike. Frankfurt reportedly want 80 million pounds plus for a center forward with one real vintage season under his locker. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that either. Gyökeres. Now, if he had cost 80 million, all of a sudden, again, I'm thinking that's a huge risk that I might not be willing to take. But for 53 million pounds, that is a risk well worth taking. So I actually think Arsenal have done really good business here. They've been patient. They haven't fed into any of the demands of Sporting. They've let the deal work out. And if anything, they've put the power in Gyökeres' hands saying, we want you. This is what we're willing to pay you. And this is where we envision you. If you really want this deal, make it happen. And again, I go back to one of the biggest pros of this deal. He wanted to make it happen. And therefore, he will be an Arsenal player. Now, Madueke is through the door, basically. Gyökeres is through the door. Mosquera is through the door, basically. Zubimendi already been confirmed. Norgard, Kepa. It's a good start to the window for Arsenal. It's a very good. The only one, honestly, that I have question marks, and it's not about the player, because I actually think Madueke is talented. I think he's good on the right, and I think he has potential on the right to really develop into a top player. But on the left, I'm genuinely, I'm not a huge fan. I'm not sold. Outside of that, it's been a great start to the window. And now, the final piece of the puzzle appears to be Eberechi Eze. I don't think Rodrigo's going to happen anymore. I don't know if Arsenal can cough up 80 million pounds after all these deals happen, with Eze as well too, for Rodrigo. That remains to be seen. I think there's going to have to be a lot of outgoings, potentially a big fee from Martinelli as well too, which we don't even know if he's going to leave. I don't know. But if that's the window, Gyökeres, Eze, Madueke, Norgard, Zubimendi, Mosquera, and Kepa, I think it's a very strong window. It's not the perfect window. I think Rodrigo would have really capped it off perfectly. I think he would have been, wow, if they could get Rodrigo, I think Arsenal are serious in every competition. I still think they will be up there. And when you kind of bring in these kinds of players for this amount of money anyways, Arsenal will be expected to get over the line this year. They've added incredible depth across the pitch, and they've brought real starting quality as well too, to add something that they don't have, which for me is a huge thing for any team. Is it enough to get over Liverpool? Is it enough to stay above City? And is it enough to fend off the increasingly growing threat that might be Chelsea Football Club? That remains to be seen. And I think a big part of it will also have to do with, again, how Gyökeres can translate. But this is a sign of intent. No one can say Arsenal this summer are not aggressive. No one can say Arsenal this summer are not assertive. And no one can say Arsenal this summer don't have ambition. Berta has moved serious. Arteta is moving aggressive. And Arsenal are really showing that this season they feel has more pressure on it than anyone before. The last few seasons, right? The first season, 22-23, they came out of nowhere. No one expected them to win the league. It's not a failure to not win the league that season, despite how long they stayed in first. Second season, they gave it a real good go. 89 points. They lost to a City team that just refused to lose at the end. Arsenal went 16-1-1 the second half of the season. What can you do? Last season, for me, was the first year they really kind of fell off that trajectory. I think they declined last season. Some will say injuries. Some will say, honestly, no luck. I think last season was the first year the trajectory kind of halted. And if anything, kind of went down a little bit. The expectation is to get back up and now do what they failed to do the last 3 years. Will they do it? Let me know in the comment section down below. But I'm impressed. I'm impressed, especially with this one. For them to get this deal over the line, for the fee that they did, I think it is a no-brainer. And I think they've done a blinder getting him in for that fee. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section down below. Arsenal fans, are you happy about Gyökeres? How many goals are you expecting him to score this season? Because that's another talking point, right? What qualifies a good season for Gyökeres? Or rather, what quantifies a good season for Gyökeres in terms of goals? Is it 20 in the league? 20 in the league. I think if he scores 20 in the league in his first season, that's a great season. Is it, 30 in all competitions? 40 in all competitions? I think for 53 million, 20 in the league is a good season for Gyökeres, penalties included, because I'm sure he will take penalties. This guy's penalty record in Portugal is outstanding. But what constitutes a great season for Gyökeres? Maybe it's just getting them over the line. Maybe it's 15 goals, but those 15 goals are so important in such huge games that that's what gets Arsenal from challengers to champions. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see you guys very, very soon. And I'll keep an eye out on this Eze deal as well, too, because that might be the final piece of the puzzle. Mikel Arteta, all eyes on you now. Catch you guys very soon. Peace.